I love stop motion. I started out doing that. It's the kind of thing that makes me enjoy movies. The tactile, the sets, the people, it all being there.
Well, I think using stop motion is one of Tim's things as a filmmaker.
Growing up, he was making his own stop motion projects.
He has an affinity for the art, and he realizes what he can get out of the puppets. He's an animator's director. He really understands the process.
McKinnon and Saunders, they worked on Corpse Bride, Frankenweenie.
We go back now for, almost 3 decades.
I think there's a huge amount of trust in designing and building puppets with McKinnon and Saunders based on their shared experiences.
It's exciting. It's like you walk in, you see the puppets being made and built and stuff. So again, it gives you a certain kind of energy that you don't get in other mediums.
I was a fan of Beetlejuice, but it always seemed like that was maybe the project that wouldn't ever come back again. So we were quite surprised when we got a call to say that he was ready to start work on it.
There were certain aspects of the script that needed to be stop motion.
As is the usual way with Tim, is he'll present a sketch and I will move quite quickly into sculptural form.
He said, well, just have a play. He was very trusting.
He wanted all the human characters to sort of feel a bit like creepy dolls. There's something a little bit off about them.
This is Staring Boy, so he needed big bulbous eyes.
The genesis of the plane crash sequence is, I think, one that's based on Tim's personal experience. He'd been on a budget airline and it had been not a pleasant experience.
It's the flight from hell, basically. You've got screaming kids, you've got somebody on their phone, lager louts. Yeah, it's horrible.
We're trying to choose the worst people in the world to ever be on a flight with.
That's a lot of characters to animate with a motion control move, sweeping across, seeing all these nightmare people. And so I felt that the best way to deal with it was to basically lay out a load of chairs.
Action.
And I got lots of members of the crew, and we literally filmed ourselves being all the nightmare people on the plane, people coughing, people eating nuts. Screaming baby, this, that, and the other. And we filmed that on green screen. And then we did the next layer of nightmare people and worked our way back. And then had someone dressed as Charles in the front with his binoculars.
So that was quite a challenge, really, because you've got a lot of puppets to animate all at once there.
Tim wanted to make this cabin really tiny. So there was a sense of sort of claustrophobia in that environment.
After the plane crash, Tim wanted the shark to look like Jaws coming out of the water. A really big, quick, dramatic moment.
It should just be like, hey, and then so it's a surprise. You don't want to tip it off too much. And then...
Now, obviously, this huge megalodon shark, which is covered in scars, it was only about that big. It's like, how big was your fish? Well, our one was that big.
So I sculpted the shark using a clay called plastiline and slap it onto an armature to get the shape. This was very important to get that Jaws look with the teeth all pointing down. I studied lots of images of sharks, and when I started, I felt like I knew the anatomy a bit and sculpted it to reflect that. We got all the fins and teeth in the right place, and you needed the mouth open to be able to swallow one of our puppet characters.
When the model comes to me, it's cast in silicon, and it will just be 2 colours usually. So for the shark, it was cast in white and an off grey, and then I have to take the artwork that I've been given and then make it look brilliant and make it look like a real shark. But when I was painting it, none of the teeth were in it, so it just looked like a kind of baby toy, like a friendly shark that was just going to gun you to death. But it wasn't until the teeth were all placed in that it actually starts to look really menacing.
Tim mentioned that the sandworm was going to return, and that obviously, should be done with stop motion. So we talked about the inclusion of that sort of iconic character.
We were bringing the sandworm puppet up to a slightly more technically sophisticated iteration of the ones that were originally done. We took everything and just raised it a little bit.
We did do some refinements with Tim and a few little adjustments to it.
Yeah.
But essentially, you want to recognise it as it's the sandworm from the original movie.
So you've got the main body, and then there's the piece that goes inside, which is the smaller sandworm. That was quite fun to paint and fairly easy because it's just black and white, and then you have the other piece on the inside.
We also needed to create this cavity inside, which was probably one of the hardest things to do, because we needed to know that cavity was going to still allow our armature inside to fit in and not interfere with the little worm's ability to be hidden away.
The sandworm is one of the biggest puppet I've ever worked with, so that was quite challenging by itself, because it was a bit more than 1 meter long and must weigh around 6 or 7 kilo.
It's made of foam and silicon with a metal armature inside, like skeleton. Because it was so heavy, you had to kind of wrestle it almost. It was quite funny as I was animating. It felt like you were kind of like taming some sort of beast or something, trying to get it to do what you wanted to. You'll move one part of it, but then you've got to kind of manipulate the entire puppet to follow those curves and stuff.
You've got to make your sandworm or your character fit into the same perspective and the same environment.
You want to make sure that the eye line of the worm is correct and that it looks like it's really interacting with those characters.
And then we would do rehearsal. We'd get the animator just block through, just very quickly, make sure all the motion was fine, very crude. So when you watched it on a video, just go, And then if Tim was happy with that movement, that trajectory and end position, then we would shoot it in the smooth way.
I need something to draw with.
The wedding sequence and using stop motion for that wasn't even on our radar when we first started talking about this project.
Gusanos de arena!
The church sequence at the end, when the sandworm appears from under the floorboards and smashes its way around the church and causing havoc. That was probably one of the most challenging sequences.
There's so much planning and thought and discussion that goes into shoots like this.
It really was a case of how are we going to get round this corner? There's a wall there. He can't go through the wall. So we had to really bend the puppet round.
I don't want to make it too much. No. Just because I think it's almost like it kind of hits, and I don't want it to just be too much damage.
It's just an impact, and then
like that. Because I want to keep it flowing with him a little bit. It's not just not reacting, but I wouldn't overreact. If that makes sense.
We had to be really precise in order to match the position and also the space of the church.
You have to bear in mind that we were animating against green screen, having to imagine that this is interacting with Michael Keaton, or this was crashing around a corner and bashing into a wall.
You know the technique and how it's done, but you still find it amazing when you see this thing come to life for the first time.
When we're doing that first composite, you sort of think, well, surely that's going to resonate out of the studio into the air and around the world, and they'll love it.
The whole process was really exciting to be involved with, and I feel really proud of the work that we achieved. I hope that I've added to the life of this iconic sandworm.
Good luck.
Beetlejuice is one of those films I watched when I was younger that really inspired me to make things and want to do animation.
It's a milestone in filmmaking, and to be asked if we'd do a section of Beetlejuice was just a joy.
I just hope that we recapture some of the fun and energy that came out of the very first film for Beetlejuice. Everyone's so excited about being asked to be part of it, so everyone's given their absolute best.